The night everything changed between Liam and me started with the kind of storm that makes you feel like the world is shaking you by the shoulders. I wasn't planning on seeing him. Honestly, we hadn't talked in months. That happens when you grow up together, drift apart, then pretend you're too busy to fix it. But around 9 p.m., just as I was getting ready to crash after a long day, thunder cracked so loudly it rattled my windows, and then my phone lit up. It was him. "Hey, you home?" That was it. No context, no explanation. Just that. Before I could even type back, another message popped up. "Can I come over? Please." I hadn't seen Liam like this. Frantic, abrupt, since we were kids, and he'd broken his mom's favorite vase and begged me to hide the pieces. Something in those texts pulled at me in that old, instinctive way. So I told him yes. 5 minutes later, he was at my door, soaked from the rain, hoodie clinging to him, hair dripping into his eyes. He didn't even say hi. He just stepped inside and stood there breathing like he'd run the whole way. "Power's out at my place," he muttered. I didn't want to be alone. I nodded, even though there was something else in his voice. Something nervous and unsteady. Liam wasn't the type to get worked up by a storm. Growing up, he'd actually liked them. He used to make us sit on my porch and watch lightning roll across the sky like it was a show meant just for us. But tonight, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "You okay?" I asked, shutting the door behind him. He hesitated. Then he did something that instantly made my heart pound. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. Not hard, not desperate, just held it, like he needed the reassurance that I was real. "I didn't know where else to go," he said quietly. We stood there like that for a moment, listening to the rain hammer the roof. And even though we hadn't been close in years, something in me recognized that look on his face. It was the one he used to have when he was trying not to cry. I nodded toward the living room. "Come on, sit," he followed, peeling off his wet hoodie and tossing it over a chair. Underneath, he was wearing a white t-shirt that was just as drenched, clinging to him in a way that made my brain stall for a second. I forced myself to look away, feeling stupid for noticing. This was Liam, my childhood best friend. The kid who used to steal my lunch snacks and draw stupid doodles on my homework. But sitting next to me on the couch, he didn't look like that kid anymore. Lightning flashed, painting his face in pale blue for a moment. His jaw was tight. His leg bounced restlessly. He kept opening his mouth like he wanted to say something, then shutting it again. "Liam," I said softly, "what's going on?" He stared at the window, watching the storm. Then, out of nowhere, he let out a shaky laugh. "You're gonna think I'm insane." "Probably," I said, smiling a little, "but go for it." He didn't smile back. Instead, he finally turned toward me, and the look in his eyes hit me like the thunder outside. Raw, vulnerable, scared. "I wasn't scared of the storm," he said. "Not really." "Okay, then what are you?" "I needed to tell you something," he interrupted. His voice cracked on the last word. "Something I've been trying to say for years." My heart froze. He looked away again, rubbing the back of his neck, a nervous habit he'd had since middle school. "The storm just pushed me over the edge," he said. "I thought about sitting in my apartment, lights out, rain everywhere, just thinking about this forever, and I couldn't do it anymore." "Liam," I whispered, "you're scaring me a little." He laughed under his breath. "I'm scaring myself." The thunder rolled again, shaking the window panes. He flinched, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly like he was holding himself together. "I don't know how to say this without ruining everything," he whispered. "You and me, our whole history. I don't want to make it weird." There it was. That sudden weight in my chest, the one I never admitted, had been there for years. "What are you trying to say?" I asked, barely breathing. He finally looked at me, and in that split second, I knew whatever he was about to confess wasn't small at all. The storm outside roared, and then he said it. "I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you since we were kids." For a moment, I couldn't hear the storm anymore. I couldn't hear anything. It felt like the entire world held its breath right along with me. Liam sat there, drenched clothes clinging to him, chest rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon. But it was his eyes, the raw, terrified honesty in them, that locked me in place. "I know," he said quickly, raising his hands like he expected me to flinch. I know this is crazy. I shouldn't have said it. I shouldn't have even come here, but I couldn't. Liam. I cut in, but he just kept going, words tumbling out like they'd been trapped for years. You were always the person I went to for everything. Every time something good happened, every time something bad happened, every time I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life, my brain just went to you. And lately it's been worse. I'd be sitting alone in my place, and you'd be the only person I wanted to call. I'd hear your name in a conversation, and my chest would... He paused, pressing a hand there. It gets tight, like I can't breathe. I stared at him, my mouth dry. He laughed then, bitter and self-punishing. God, I sound insane. No, I whispered, shaking my head. You don't. Yes, I do, he said, leaning back against the couch, eyes shutting tightly. Because you don't feel the same. You can't. Why would you? I sat there, shocked, not by his confession, but by the fact that he genuinely believed I'd never thought of him that way. He exhaled shakily. I kept waiting for it to go away, for me to get over it, for you to date someone else, or for me to date someone else, or something. But nothing worked. Every time I tried to move on, everything just pushed me right back to you. The thunder cracked again, lighting him up for half a second. He looked wrecked, eyes glassy, cheeks flushed, wet hair sticking to his forehead. I'd seen him upset before. I'd seen him angry, scared, embarrassed, hurt. But I'd never seen him like this. I didn't want to tell you, he whispered, voice trembling. I really didn't. But tonight, when the storm hit and the power went out, all I could think about was how stupid I'd be if something happened and you never knew. I couldn't sit there in the dark with that anymore. I swallowed hard. Liam, my voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He laughed again, quiet, humorless. Because you're you, I frowned. What does that mean? It means you were always the strong one, he said. The stable one. The one with your head on straight. And I didn't want to be the mess who showed up at your door and dumped feelings on you you never asked for. I blinked slowly, my heartbeat uneven. Liam, I said, softer now, look at me. He hesitated, then lifted his eyes. I had never seen them so vulnerable. I don't think you're a mess, I said. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. And I don't think you came here to dump anything on me. You came because you trust me. Because you've always trusted me. I paused. And that means something. Liam swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. So you're not angry? Of course I'm not angry. Or disgusted? Liam, I said firmly, leaning closer. Look at me. His eyes met mine again. I could never be disgusted by you. Ever. He stared at me for a long second, rain pattering against the windows, thunder rolling in the distance. Then he let out a shaky breath, like the tension in his chest finally cracked open. But I need you to understand, he said quietly. I didn't come here expecting you to say anything back. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know, even if it ruins everything. I felt something twist inside me, sharp, warm, impossible to ignore. All of this, I said slowly, everything you just told me, it doesn't ruin anything. His eyes widened slightly. It doesn't. I shook my head. No. He stared at me, waiting, like his entire world was balanced on the next words that came out of my mouth. And maybe mine was too. Liam, I said, voice soft, steady, somehow braver than I felt. You didn't ruin anything. You just changed everything. His breath hitched. Before he could speak, the lights in my apartment flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The room dropped into darkness. I heard him inhale sharply. Okay? He whispered, somewhere close. I'm really gonna need you right now. When the power cut out, the sound that came out of Liam's throat wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a laugh. It was somewhere in between, like he couldn't decide whether to panic or pretend he wasn't panicking. Okay, he muttered in the dark. This is actually the worst timing imaginable. I felt him shift beside me on the couch. The room was pitch black, the storm outside the only light when lightning flashed through the windows for half a second at a time. Every flash carved out his silhouette, tense shoulders, hands clenched together, chest rising and falling too fast. "You good?" I asked quietly. "No," he said immediately. "I mean, maybe? I don't know. I feel like my heart is trying to escape my body." "From the storm, or from what you just told me?" "Both," he admitted, voice thin. Another thunderclap shook the apartment. Liam flinched hard. I placed a hand on his arm instinctively, forgetting for a moment that everything between us had just changed. But he didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned into the touch, his muscles slowly unclenching under my palm. "Hey," I said, soft but steady, "I'm right here." He let out a shaky breath. "I know. That's why I came." For a moment, neither of us moved. The darkness made everything feel closer, like the world had shrunk down to just the two of us on that couch. No storm, no past, no fear. Just the quiet thump of his heartbeat under my fingers. "Can I?" he started, then trailed off. "Can you what?" I asked. He shifted slightly, and I felt his fingers brush my wrist. Hesitant, searching. "Can I sit closer?" he whispered. I didn't trust my voice, so I answered by sliding toward him, closing the space between us until our knees touched. He exhaled like he'd been underwater and finally broke the surface. Lightning flashed again, and for the briefest moment, I saw his face. Eyes soft, worried, hopeful. When the room went dark again, he rested his forehead gently against my shoulder. "I've pictured being this close to you so many times it feels unreal," he murmured, "like I'm dreaming." "You're not dreaming," I said quietly. "You're here. And you're not pushing me away." "No," I said, letting my thumb trace a slow line along his forearm. "I'm not." He let out a low, stunned laugh. "I didn't think you'd even let me touch you after what I said," I swallowed. "I've been thinking about you too, Liam, just not in a way I knew how to admit." He lifted his head slightly, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "That things between us haven't felt the same for a while," I said. "That I've missed you more than I should. That you showing up tonight doesn't feel wrong. It feels like something I didn't know I needed." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was warm, charged, fragile. Then in the dark, he slid his hand into mine. Slowly, like he was giving me every chance to pull away. Our fingers interlaced with a softness that made my chest feel too full. "I'm really scared," he whispered, "about what this means, about messing everything up, about wanting something I don't know how to handle." "You don't have to handle it alone," I said. "You came here, that's already enough." His grip tightened just slightly. Thunder cracked again, loud enough to rattle picture frames. Liam flinched, and without thinking, I drew him closer until his head rested against me again. This time, his arm slipped around my waist, tentative but real. "You're warm," he murmured, almost embarrassed. "So are you," I said, another breathless laugh. "This is not how I expected tonight to go." "Me neither," I admitted. "But I'm not complaining." I felt him smile against my shoulder, a small, disbelieving smile. Then he spoke again, voice softer than anything I'd ever heard from him. "Can I tell you the real reason the storm freaked me out?" "Yeah," I said. "Tell me." "I was sitting alone in the dark," he whispered, "and for the first time in my life, the only person I wanted wasn't someone I was supposed to want." My heartbeat stumbled, and everything hit me at once. What if you never knew? What if something happened and all the things I kept buried just stayed buried forever? I started panicking, and I just ran here, to you, like I always do. My throat tightened. "You're allowed to want me, Liam," I said quietly. "You're allowed to say it." He lifted his head again, and even in the dark, I could feel the intensity in his gaze. "And what if I want more than that?" he asked, voice trembling. "What if I've wanted more for a long time?" I didn't look away. "Then tell me what more means." For the first time all night, he didn't hesitate. "It means I want to know what it feels like to be with you," he whispered. "To be close to you in a way I've never been close to anyone." The storm roared on outside. Inside, something even louder shifted quietly between us. For a long moment, All I could do was breathe. Slow, careful, like one wrong move would collapse the fragile space we'd built in the dark. The storm kept throwing flashes of white across the room, painting Liam in brief outlines. His tense jaw, the rise and fall of his chest, the way his fingers still held mine like he was afraid I'd vanish if he let go. "What does being close mean to you?" I finally asked. He swallowed. I could hear it more than see it. "It means," he exhaled shakily, "it means I've wanted your attention, your touch, your voice. I've wanted the way you look at people you care about, the way you used to look at me when we were younger." My heart twisted. "I never stopped looking at you like that." He laughed softly, breathlessly, like the words hit him too hard. "You didn't. I just didn't know how to see it." Rain hammered the windows, drowning out everything except the space between us. Liam shifted closer, so close his knee brushed mine, so close I could feel the warmth radiating off him even in the cold blackout. "Can I try something?" he whispered. "What?" "Being honest," he said. "For once." "You can be honest with me," I said gently. "Always." His hand left mine. For one terrifying second, I thought he'd pulled away completely. But then I felt his palm settle lightly on my thigh. Not grabbing, not testing, just resting there, careful, waiting. I felt his hesitation through the warmth of his fingers. "I've imagined this," he admitted in a low voice, "more times than I should have. Sitting with you, touching you, wondering what you'd do if I ever stopped being such a coward." "You're not a coward," I said quietly. "I am," he said with a weak laugh. "I ran here because I couldn't handle the idea of losing you without you ever knowing the truth." I turned slightly, enough that my shoulder brushed his chest. He sucked in a breath like the contact surprised him. "You're not losing me," I whispered. His hand tightened just a little on my thigh through the fabric of my jeans. Not in a demanding way, in a terrified, careful, wanting way. "That's the thing," he murmured. "I'm terrified of what happens if I don't." He leaned in before he could second-guess it. Forehead touching mine, breath trembling against my lips, though neither of us moved any further. The closeness was electric, the kind you feel down your spine, humming in your ribs. Lightning flashed again. For a split second, I saw his face. Eyes soft, worried, wanting. When the darkness swallowed us back up, I heard him whisper, "Tell me to stop and I'll stop." My chest tightened. "Liam," I said softly, "I'm not telling you to stop." He let out a shaky breath. "Okay, but I don't know if I should go further. I don't want to rush this. Or make you think I'm here because of the storm, or because I panicked, or because—" I cut him off. "You're here because you wanted to be with me," I said. "That's enough." Silence, but not empty silence. Then I felt it, his thumb brushing gently along my thigh, tracing slow, uncertain lines like he was trying to memorize me. He leaned into me more, his temple brushing my cheek, his breath warm against my jaw. "Do you want me?" he whispered. My heartbeat stalled. "Yeah," I said, voice barely a breath. "Yeah, I do." He inhaled sharply. Not surprised, exactly, but overwhelmed, like he wasn't ready to hear the thing he'd wanted for years finally spoken back to him. His other hand slid up my arm, tentative but determined, stopping at my shoulder. He didn't pull, he didn't force, he just held me there, grounding himself. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted in a shaky whisper. "I've never felt this way about a guy before. Or anyone, really, not like this." "You don't have to know," I said. "We're just talking, sitting, being honest." "Yeah," he breathed. "Honest." His forehead dipped a rest against my cheek. My hand instinctively settled on his waist, fingers brushing the damp fabric of his shirt. He tensed, not out of discomfort, but because of how intensely he felt it. Lightning illuminated us again, him leaning into me, me holding on to him. Two people sitting in the dark, realizing the truth wasn't a weapon but a release. And then, in the quiet that followed, he whispered the kind of thing that changed everything we thought we understood. "I didn't just come here because I was scared." His voice dropped lower. "I came because being near you feels like the only place I'm not." I closed my eyes. "Liam, I want to know what this could be," he whispered, but I don't want to mess it up. So just tell me how close I'm allowed to be right now. Outside, thunder shook the sky. Inside, something far softer, but way more dangerous, trembled between us. And I knew that whatever happened next, neither of us would forget it. For a second, I thought the storm outside was quieter, or maybe it was just that my pulse had gotten louder. Everything in the room felt amplified. The warmth of Liam's breath near my jaw, the weight of his hand resting on my thigh, the soft tremble running through him every time thunder cracked. He was waiting. For permission, for direction, for something that would tell him he wasn't imagining all of this. "Come here," I murmured. Not a command, an invitation. He shifted closer until our sides touched, hesitant at first, then more sure once he realized I wasn't pulling away. The warmth of him soaked through my shirt, and his hand moved from my thigh to my hip, fingers curling into the fabric like he needed an anchor. "Is this okay?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I said, "it's okay." But the truth was, okay was too small a word for what it felt like to have him pressed against me in the dark. Lightning flashed again, and in that momentary slice of white, I caught his expression, soft, nervous, and fiercely vulnerable. When the room went black again, he exhaled shakily and rested his head against my shoulder. "I don't know how to slow down," he admitted. "I feel like everything I've been holding in for years is trying to come out at once." "You don't have to rush anything," I said. "We're just here." He nodded against me. Then his fingers brushed my side gently, exploring the shape of me with slow, careful touches. Almost like he was learning a language he had wanted to speak forever. "I used to imagine this," he said softly, "but I never thought it would feel like this." "Like what?" I asked. His hand slid up my torso, stopping just under my ribs. "Like something I'm not supposed to want, but I've wanted anyway." His honesty hit different in the dark. I felt him shift, turning toward me, his chest brushing mine. The air tightened between us, warm, electric, full. His breath moved along my cheek, then my lips, not touching but close enough that my skin reacted anyway. He paused. I could practically feel the question hanging in his throat. "Liam," I whispered, "you can come closer." He did. Hesitantly, then fully, closing the inches between us until our foreheads touched again. His hand slid to the back of my neck this time, fingers threading into my hair. The touch sent heat down my spine. "I'm shaking," he muttered, embarrassed. "I know," I said. "Me too." He laughed under his breath, a short, stunned sound. We stayed like that. Foreheads together, breaths mixing, until the storm cracked again and he flinched. His body pressed into mine instinctively, and without thinking, I wrapped an arm around his waist, holding him steady. This time he didn't pull back. He melted into it. "I didn't think you'd ever hold me like this," he whispered. "I didn't think you'd ever want me to," I said. He let out a breath that sounded like relief, heavy, shaky, honest. My thumb brushed circles at his waist, and each slow touch made his breath hitch. Then he lifted his head, brushing his nose against mine, the gentlest gesture. Almost accidental. "Tell me," he whispered, "how close is too close?" I swallowed. "There's no too close right now." His hand on my neck tightened just slightly. Not to pull me, but because the words hit him deeper than he expected. He took a breath, voice trembling. "Can I?" Just then, lightning flashed, illuminating us nose to nose, breaths shared, lips almost touching. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving us suspended in the thick dark. "Liam," I murmured, "whatever you're about to ask, the answer is probably yes." That was when something in him cracked open, not confidence exactly, but surrender. He moved in closer, the warmth of his chest flush against mine, his breath trembling against my mouth. But he didn't kiss me. Not yet. Instead, he whispered something even more intimate. "I've never felt safe with anyone the way I feel safe with you." My chest tightened. "And I want to feel what it's like," he said, voice shaking, "to be wanted back." The storm outside growled like distant applause. I slid my hand up his back, slow enough for him to absorb it, firm enough for him to feel what I wasn't saying out loud yet. "Then, stay close," I whispered. "Don't pull away." He didn't. Not even an inch. If anything, he leaned in so carefully that I felt the faintest brush of his lips against mine. Featherlight, trembling, asking instead of taking. And everything inside me answered. That first fragile brush of Liam's lips against mine wasn't even a real kiss. It was a question. A trembling, years-in-the-making question. And the moment it happened, even as soft as it was, something inside both of us stilled. He didn't move. He didn't rush. He just hovered there, lips barely touching mine, like he was terrified the whole thing would disappear if he pressed any harder. "Was that okay?" he whispered. His breath trembled against my mouth, and the way he asked it, not like a guy trying to make a move, but like someone who'd been carrying a secret too heavy for too long, made my chest ache. "Yeah," I murmured. "It was." Lightning flashed across the room again, illuminating the outline of his face. Eyes half shut, hope flickering in them like the storm outside. When darkness swallowed us again, he exhaled shakily, his forehead falling to mine. "I feel like my body's not listening to me," he whispered, "like I'm floating." "You're grounded," I said, sliding my hand up his back. "You're here, with me." His fingers tightened where they rested at the back of my neck. Then, slowly, he pulled in another breath and let it out against my lips. "Can I try that again?" he asked. I didn't answer with words this time. I tilted my head and closed the gap he'd been too scared to cross fully. This time, he kissed me, gently, but with a raw, searching warmth that made my heart stumble in my chest. It wasn't practiced or smooth. It wasn't something he'd clearly done 100 times before. It was hesitant, soft, almost clumsy, and somehow perfect because it was him. He pulled back a fraction, breath unsteady. "Oh my God," he whispered, thumb brushing my cheek like he wasn't sure I was real. I didn't know what it would feel like. He broke off, overwhelmed. I rested my forehead against his. "Like what?" "Like something I should have done years ago," he breathed. The storm growled again outside, thunder rolling deep and low, but neither of us flinched this time. It felt like the noise belonged to another world entirely. He shifted even closer, knee sliding between mine, his body warm and tense as he pressed into me. His hands found my waist, fingers curling into my shirt like they were instinctively seeking more contact even if his brain hadn't fully caught up. "Is this too much?" he asked, suddenly, pulling back just an inch. "I don't want to push." "You're not pushing," I said, brushing my thumb across his jaw. "You're just being honest." His breath hitched. "And right now," I added, "I want you close." That did something to him. I felt it in the way he inhaled sharply, in how his posture softened, but his hands gripped me tighter. He rested his head against my shoulder for a moment, steadying himself. "I've never been this close to someone," he admitted quietly. "Not like this. Not wanting them like this. You're doing fine." He smiled against my skin. Small, shaky, real. Then he lifted himself again, sliding one hand up my chest, over the slow thump of my heartbeat. His fingers traced the shape of me, gentle, almost curious. "I didn't know it would feel this different," he murmured. "Touching you. Wanting to be touched back." "How does it feel?" I asked. His thumb brushed my collarbone, slow and warm. "Right," he whispered. "Terrifying, but right." He leaned in again, kissing me a second time. Deeper now, more certain, but still careful, like he was learning me 1 inch at a time. My hand slid under the hem of his shirt, fingertips brushing his lower back, and he sucked in a sharp breath at the contact. "Jesus," he whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't know just being touched would feel like that." Then, "Don't stop," I murmured. He rested his forehead on my shoulder again, laughing quietly out of disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening. I've replayed this in my head so many times, and it never felt as intense as the real thing." His hand traveled slowly up my spine, stopping at the back of my neck before pulling me in, closer still. "I don't want the storm to end," he whispered, voice barely audible. Because I don't want this to end. The lights stayed off. The rain kept falling. And Liam, trembling, warm, breathless, pressed himself against me like he never wanted anything else. And for the first time in years, I realized something too. Neither did I. Liam didn't move for a long time. His head stayed tucked against my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck, his hand still holding on to me like he wasn't convinced I was real. Outside, the rain had softened, but inside, everything between us had only gotten louder, thicker, warmer, heavier with meaning. When he finally lifted his head, his hair brushed my cheek, damp and messy from the storm. He looked different in the dark, softer, somehow younger, but also braver than I'd ever seen him. "I'm trying not to freak out," he whispered. "You're doing a pretty good job," I murmured. He huffed a shaky laugh. "I feel like my body is buzzing. Is that normal?" "For this?" I said. "Yeah, it is." He nodded, eyes dropping to my mouth for a split second before he caught himself and looked away, embarrassed. But the movement didn't go unnoticed. "Not by me." "You can look at me," I said quietly. He did, slowly, like he wasn't sure he had the right to. "I don't want you to think I'm rushing into something just because I panicked tonight," he said. "This isn't some storm-induced breakdown. I know. I've wanted this for a long time," he admitted, voice almost trembling again. "I wanted you. I just didn't know if wanting you was allowed." "You're allowed," I said. Lightning flashed through the room, illuminating the way his shoulders relaxed just a little, like he was finally letting himself believe it. When the light faded, he reached out again, brushing his fingers along my jaw. "You're warm," he said softly. "You always were." He let his hand slide down my throat, stopping at my collarbone. A touch that felt like an exhale and a confession wrapped together. "I never thought I'd get this close to you," he whispered. "Not in any universe. That's because you never tried." "I was scared," he said. "Still am. But you're here." He swallowed, his thumb lightly tracing my skin. "I'm here." Without thinking, I placed my hand at his waist again, guiding him just a little closer. He followed easily, settling between my legs, his knees brushing mine, his breath catching at the new closeness. "Jesus," he whispered. "I didn't realize how intense this feels." His hand slid up my chest, slow and deliberate, like he was memorizing every inch. When his palm rested over my heartbeat, he froze. "You're shaking too." "Yeah," I admitted. "Why?" "Because it's you." His breath faltered, and I felt him press himself even closer until his forehead rested against mine. "I don't know what I'm allowed to do," he whispered. "Anything we're both comfortable with." He closed his eyes, breathing me in slowly. "What if I want more?" he asked. "Then you tell me what more means to you." He hesitated. His hand dropped from my chest, trailing down my stomach before settling at my hip. A boldness that surprised even him. I heard the small inhale he made when he realized exactly where his hand was. "I don't know where to start," he said. "I keep thinking about touching you, being close, feeling you against me. And every time I get that thought, I shut it down because I didn't think you'd ever want it." Lightning illuminated us again, his face close, lips parted, eyes bright with something new and unsteady. When the room went dark again, he whispered, "Will you show me?" My heartbeat stuttered. "Show you what?" "How to be close to you," he said, voice cracking on the last word. "For real." He wasn't talking about anything fast, or wild, or complicated. He meant intimacy, the kind he'd never let himself imagine. I raised my hand slowly and placed my palm against the side of his face. His eyes fluttered shut, as though the touch alone unraveled him. He leaned into it, breath shaking out of him in a low exhale. "Like this?" I asked softly. He nodded, almost helplessly. My thumb brushed his cheek. "And this?" Another nod. His hands gripped my waist harder. Then, finally, I cupped his face fully and pulled him into another kiss. Soft, unhurried, deeper than before. He kissed me back instantly, like he'd been waiting years to do it right. His fingers dug into my shirt, pulling me closer, anchoring himself. When we broke apart, he didn't move away. He let his forehead rest against mine again, breathing hard, voice barely holding steady. "I didn't know I could feel like this," he whispered. "I didn't know someone could feel like this." "You're doing everything right," I said. He laughed under his breath, quiet, trembling. "This storm could wipe out the whole city," he murmured, "and I don't think I'd even notice anymore." I slid my hand down his back, feeling the shiver that ran through him. "So what do you want now?" I asked gently. He didn't hesitate this time. "Whatever lets me stay close to you," he whispered. "Just don't let go yet." And I didn't. I held him tighter, the storm outside fading, the room still dark, the moment stretching out like the first breath of something neither of us had ever let ourselves hope for. Something real. Something changing. Something we weren't turning back from. Liam stayed pressed against me like he was afraid a single inch of distance would break whatever fragile magic had wrapped itself around us. And honestly, I didn't want an inch between us either. His hands had settled on my waist again, tighter now, less hesitant. Like, with every breath he took, he was letting go of another piece of the fear he'd been carrying for years. The storm was still rumbling outside, but it felt far away, like something happening to another version of us in another world. Right here, in the dark, it was just him, warm, trembling, close. "I feel like I'm learning how to breathe again," he murmured against my neck. "That a good thing?" I asked quietly. He nodded against me. "Yeah, really good." I slid my fingers slowly up his back, tracing the seam of his damp shirt, feeling his muscles tense and then soften. The touch made him shiver, his breath catching slightly as he pressed his forehead into my shoulder. "Why does that feel so?" He cut himself off with a soft laugh. "So intense?" "Because you want it," I murmured. "Because you're finally letting yourself feel it." He let that sit in the dark for a while, his hands gripping the sides of my shirt like he needed something to hold on to. I felt him shift, lifting his head slightly, brushing his cheek along my jaw in a slow, almost instinctive motion. "I keep thinking I'm going to mess this up," he whispered. "You're not." "Yeah, but what if I say the wrong thing? Or move too fast? Or, Liam," I said gently, turning my head until our noses brushed again, "you can't mess this up by being honest." He breathed in sharply, as if the words hit him somewhere deep. Lightning flickered again, illuminating the soft, unsure smile on his lips. "Okay, then I'll say something honest." "I'm listening." He swallowed, his hands sliding up my sides, tentative but deliberate. "I want to be closer, more than this. But I don't know how to ask for it without sounding like I'm rushing." "You're not rushing," I said. "You're reacting. There's a difference." His fingers curled lightly at my ribs, and I felt the tremor in his touch. "What if I told you," he whispered, "that I want to feel you against me? For real. Not accidentally. Not by chance. But because we both want it." My pulse stumbled. "Then I'd tell you," I murmured, "that you can ask." He exhaled shakily. "Okay. Then can you?" He stopped. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because the words backed up in his throat, overwhelmed by the feeling of the moment itself. Instead, he leaned in, sliding his body flush against mine. Chest to chest, thigh to thigh, moving slowly, giving me every chance to stop him. I didn't. He let his forehead rest against mine again, whispering, "Is this okay?" "More than okay." His breath hitched. "Good. Because I don't think I can pull back now." He shifted even closer, his hand brushing under the hem of my shirt this time, warm fingers against warm skin. The second he made contact, his whole body reacted, breath catching, heartbeat speeding up. "Oh my God," he whispered. That feels—" He didn't have the words. He didn't need them. I guided his other hand up to my chest, and he froze for half a second before letting his palm settle there, feeling my heartbeat under his fingers. "You're shaking," he murmured. "So are you." "Because of you." Something in his voice softened, unguarded, unfiltered. I used to wonder, he said quietly, what it would feel like if you ever touched me like this. But imagining it wasn't even close. His hand slid a little higher under my shirt, exploring the shape of me with slow, reverent curiosity. He wasn't grabbing, wasn't rushing. He was learning, feeling, letting himself want. And then he let out the smallest, rawest confession yet. I want to be yours, he whispered, barely audible over the soft rumble of thunder. I want this to mean something. My breath caught. It does, he inhaled shakily. And you want me too? Not just tonight? Not just because I said something dramatic in a storm? I want you, I said. I've wanted you. He closed his eyes, his whole body sinking into mine with a soft, relieved sound. Something between a sigh and a quiet laugh. Then don't let go, he whispered. Not yet. I won't. Slowly, he lifted my shirt higher, just enough to rest his hand fully against my skin. His thumb brushed along my side, slow, tentative, full of emotion he didn't know how to name yet. Can we? He started, then stopped, voice shaking. Can we stay like this for a while? Close like this? I don't want to rush anything, I just want to feel you. We can stay as long as you want, I said. He kissed me again, deeper this time, more sure, and everything he'd been holding back poured into that moment. His hands, his breath, his closeness, all of it honest and unfiltered. When we finally broke apart, he stayed right there, resting his head against mine. I think, he whispered, this storm might be the best stupid thing that's ever happened to me. And just like that, the tension between us settled into something warm and solid. Something real. Something new. Liam didn't pull away. Not after the kiss. Not after the confession. Not even after the air thickened around us with a weight neither of us knew how to describe yet. If anything, he leaned in more, pressing his forehead to mine, his breath steadying, his fingers still warm against my skin under my shirt. Outside, the storm had started to quiet, the thunder fading into softer rumbles, but inside, everything felt even more intense. Calmer maybe, but deeper. Like the chaos had settled enough for us to actually feel what had been boiling underneath all night. I didn't know I could feel this safe, he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. Not with anyone. You don't have to be scared around me, I said. He let out a soft, unsteady breath. I know. That's the part that gets me. He shifted slightly, his leg brushing between mine again, deliberately this time. Not accidental, not hesitant, just close. He rested his hand on my side, the edge of his thumb brushing the skin beneath my shirt in slow, thoughtful strokes. It wasn't rushed, wasn't frantic. It was intimate in a way that made my whole body react, but not in a way that overwhelmed him. Can I tell you something else? He asked quietly. Of course. He swallowed, his fingers tightening slightly at my waist before relaxing again. When I said I ran here because of the storm, that wasn't the full story. I looked at him, even if I could barely see him in the dark. What do you mean? He took a long breath. The kind someone takes right before they admit something that's been sitting heavy in their chest for too long. I was lying on my couch thinking about you, he said. Thinking about everything we used to be and everything we never let ourselves be. My heart jumped. And suddenly it hit me, he whispered. What if the storm wasn't the thing I was afraid of? What if the thing I was really scared of was the idea of never knowing what it would feel like to be with you? Liam, I didn't want to die someday, he continued softly, wondering what your skin felt like, or your kiss, or your arms around me. I didn't want another year of pretending I didn't want you. His hand slid up my chest again as if to emphasize the point, slow and careful, stopping right over my heartbeat. This, he whispered. This is what I wanted. I covered his hand with mine. And you have it. He let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for years. Then, slowly, he shifted again, lifting one leg so he could straddle one of mine, sitting closer than he ever had, his body molding into mine in a way that made both of us inhale sharply. Too much? He asked immediately, even though his voice betrayed how badly he didn't want to pull away. "No," I said, my hand sliding to his hip, steadying him. "It's perfect." That word hit him hard. I felt the shiver travel through him. He leaned into me again, pressing his chest fully against mine. The contact was enough to make him gasp quietly, like he wasn't expecting it to feel as good as it did. "God," he whispered, "I didn't know being this close could feel like this." He rested his head on my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck. "I want to stay here," he murmured. "Like this. We can." He hummed softly, a sound that vibrated against my skin, and slid his hands around my back, pulling me into a slow, tentative embrace. Not playful, not friendly, something deeper, a kind of closeness we'd never allowed ourselves before. "I used to think about hugging you," he said quietly. "Really hugging you. The kind that lasts. The kind where you don't want to let go." I tightened my arms around him. "You don't have to let go tonight," I whispered. He sank into me fully then, like the last bit of tension left his body. His cheek pressed against my neck, his fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt, holding on like he'd been waiting years to do that. Lightning flashed weakly outside, but neither of us looked. The storm was barely a whisper now, and it no longer owned the moment. Liam did. After a long, breath-filled silence, he spoke again. "Can I sleep here tonight?" he whispered. "Of course." "I don't mean on the couch," he clarified, a voice softer. "I mean with you, next to you, close." My heart didn't skip. It fully stopped. "Yes," I said. "Stay with me." He pulled back just enough to look at me. Even in the dark, I could feel the softness in his expression, the disbelief, the hope. "I've wanted to fall asleep next to you since we were kids," he whispered, "but I never thought I'd get to." I brushed a thumb along his jaw. "You get to," I said, "tonight, and after tonight if you want." His breath caught. Then he leaned in and kissed me. Slow, deep, lingering, the kind of kiss that meant trust more than anything else. His hand slid up my back again, holding me with a tender urgency that made the moment feel even heavier. When he finally pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine one last time. "This is real, right?" he whispered. "You and me?" "Yeah," I said softly. "It's real." He exhaled a small, trembling laugh full of relief. "Okay," he whispered. "Then take me to your room. I want to fall asleep next to you." And for the first time all night, the storm didn't matter anymore. Liam's voice lingered in the dark long after he said it. "Take me to your room. I want to fall asleep next to you." It hung there, warm and delicate, like a final piece sliding into place after years of not fitting. The storm had quieted even more, leaving behind only the soft patter of rain against the windows. But inside, everything still felt charged. Not chaotic anymore, just full. I stood slowly, feeling Liam's hand slide down my sides as I rose. He kept hold of my shirt for a moment, like he didn't want to break contact until he had to. "You sure?" I asked, offering my hand. He looked up at me in the dim light. Tired, soft, still a little shaken, but sure in a way I hadn't seen in him all night. He nodded once, then placed his hand in mine. "Yeah," he whispered. "I'm sure." I led him down the hallway toward my room. The floorboards creaked under our feet, the whole apartment dim without the power, but it felt strangely comforting, like we were moving through a moment suspended outside of normal time. When we reached the doorway, Liam paused. Not out of fear, out of awe. "I have imagined you sleeping," he admitted, voice quiet. "Not in a creepy way, just wondering what it would feel like to be next to you. Like this." My chest tightened. "You don't have to imagine anymore." He let out a small breath, stepping inside the room with me. The faint light from the storm made the shadows soft, the bed a dark outline against the wall. Liam's fingers brushed mine again as we approached, like he wasn't ready to let go, even for a second. When we reached the edge of the bed, he turned to me, hands still trembling slightly. Where do you want me?" he winced. God, that's not what I... I laughed gently and squeezed his hand. Liam, it's okay? He exhaled, relieved. Just lie down, I said. Wherever you're comfortable. He nodded, lifting the blanket and sliding beneath it. He settled on his side, facing me, looking suddenly younger and older at the same time. Vulnerable, but trusting. When I lay down beside him, our faces were only inches apart. Liam's breath hitched. You're right here, he whispered, almost in disbelief. I can't believe you're really here. I brushed a hand through his still damp hair. I'm not going anywhere. At first, he just looked at me. Long, quiet, searching. It was like he was trying to memorize my face in the dim light. Trying to process that this was him, and I wasn't pushing him away. Then, slowly, he scooted closer, sliding one leg between mine, letting his forehead rest against my chest. His arm draped across my torso, tentative but wanting. The moment he touched me like that, fully, openly, he let out a sound I'd never heard from him before. Not a sigh, not a gasp, a release. This, he whispered, voice wavering, this is the safest I've felt in years. I wrapped an arm around him, pulling him closer. His whole body softened, molding against mine, his breath warming my shirt. You feel so warm, he murmured, cheek pressed to me. I didn't know being held could feel like this. Then stay. He tightened his grip slightly. I want to. For a few minutes, we stayed like that. Just breathing, letting the room settle around us. His thumb traced slow circles against my hip. Not consciously, just a natural response to being close. Every now and then, he'd shift, pressing closer, sighing quietly like his whole world had finally unclenched. Then he spoke again, softly, bravely. Can I say something without you thinking I'm getting ahead of myself? Of course. He lifted his head just enough that his lips brushed my collarbone as he whispered, I think I've loved you for a long time. My heart stuttered. And I don't mean some confusing crush, he continued, voice trembling. I mean the real kind. The kind where seeing you happy makes me feel whole. The kind where losing you always felt like losing air. Liam, I don't expect you to say it back, he said quickly. I know tonight is a lot, but I want you to know that this isn't confusion, or the storm, or fear. I came here because loving you was the only thing that didn't scare me anymore. He rested his head back against my chest, breathing me in. And if you let me, he whispered, I want to see where this goes. Slow, real, with you. I placed a hand over his, squeezing gently. We'll take it slow, I murmured. But, Liam, you're not the only one who feels something real right now. His breath froze for a moment, then rushed out of him in a quiet, stunned laugh against my skin. Yeah, he whispered. You feel it too? I kissed the top of his head, soft and deliberate. Yeah, I said. I do. He didn't say anything after that. He didn't have to. He just curled closer, his fingers intertwining with mine beneath the blanket, his breathing syncing with mine as the storm finally eased into a distant hum outside. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, Liam fell asleep with a smile on his face. In my arms. Exactly where he'd wanted to be. Exactly where I wanted him.